Okay, we're recording. Welcome, Alex
Yay!
Franzen. Yay!
Thanks for having me. It's
Welcome
so
to
fun to
Red
chat with
Slice.
you.
I know.
I've got my red couch behind me.
Oh, did you do that just for me?
You know, I bought it just for you, just for this, just for this video.
They're going to take it out when we're done.
Yes.
But I am so excited to talk to you today and so excited to have you talk to the tribe about your newest book. But before we get to all the good stuff, I want to share a little bit about who you are with people that might not be familiar with you. Alex is a writer, consultant, teacher, all-around awesome person. Alex and I met almost 10 years ago, early in my business. We were doing some writing collaboration together, I think, for some of my clients. And then you've done writing for me over the years. And then you've branched out and written books and done all these great things. But Alex has been featured in a lot of press all over the place. Time, Forbes, Newsweek, probably some of your favorite blogs as well. And her newest book is called You're Going to Survive. And I'm a huge fan of all of Alex's work. Her blog, if you're not subscribed to it, is amazing. It's like this wonderful, magical little pick-me-up that comes into your email box every so often.
Aw.
So, Alex, welcome. I'm sure I
you.
missed a ton, but what else would you like us to know about you and what you're working on these days?
Well, I think it's important to know that I can touch my toes. I'm very flexible.
Life skills.
I can make a mean old fashioned. That's the cocktail I've learned how to make this year. Very proud. I watched some YouTube videos. I think you covered the basics. And the new book, You're Going to Survive, you are in the book, which is super cool.
Yay!
Yeah.
I know. I was honored to be asked. So I can't wait for us to dig into that a little bit more. And where are you based out of, and what types of clients do you work with now, or folks do you teach now?
Yeah, I'm based in Portland, Oregon. I've lived here for about 4-ish years, 5 years, something like that. Gosh, that's horrifying. The time has flown by.
I know. It is nuts. Well, the fact that we've known each other almost 10 years is nuts to me.
What? I know.
I know.
Oh my gosh. So I live in Portland. In terms of work with clients, I do writing. So people will hire me. Sometimes it's a small business owner. Sometimes it's a larger company. There's kind of a variety of different clients I work with, but they'll hire me basically when they have a project that they need some writing or communication help with. So it might be ghostwriting a book, it might be editing, it might be writing materials for a website or a product launch. Lately, it's been a lot of speeches, actually,
That's
and
great.
TEDx talks and things like that. Yeah, so it's really fun. I get to kind of sit down with clients and dig into what it is they're trying to express. And sometimes they give me, some rough first drafts to work with, and other times I'm starting from scratch, but it's super fun. I love it. And I've been doing this work now as a self-employed person for about 8 years. And it's been wonderful. I've gotten to collaborate on all kinds of projects, and it is the best. What can I say? I feel so, it's almost, bizarre that I get to actually make a living doing something that I love so much. When I was 20 years old, I never could have imagined, that this could be a possibility. So it's something I'm very grateful for.
Well, I think that's a really important question to talk about. There are so many people that want to do creative work, but how do they make it commercially viable? Like maybe a little bit from your story, but you've worked with so many creative entrepreneurs. What are some things that you've seen? I was just talking to someone today, I hate the term best practices, but what are some things that have worked for people in turning that creativity into something that can actually sustain them financially?
Yeah. This is a great question. And, everyone is different, obviously. No two businesses or freelancers look alike. But one thing that I've definitely found to be true is the more specific I am about what it is that I am offering, the more likely that people are going to want to hire me, right? So if I'm really vague and loosey-goosey in my language, like, I'm a wordsmith collaborator, and we can co-create the future that you envision through the art of prose. Like if I'm very kind of like, whoa, then people
Right.
are like, what do you do? Like, I don't understand
Exactly.
what it
What
is
do
that
you do?
what
Totally.
do you do? But if I say, hey, you want to create your first podcast, hire me. I can help you brainstorm a great title. I can write a description for iTunes. I can write a script so that you have something to riff off of, and we can, outline your first season. We'll get it done together in a week. Let's do it. That's a
Right.
specific project, right, that
Mm-hmm.
someone can hire me to do. So I have learned over the years through trial and error to be even more clear and crisp and precise in the way that I describe what it is I can do, so that people understand,
Right.
and get
Right.
excited about hiring me. And I have to tell you, it's really funny. I was looking back on some website language that I used like 8 or 9 years ago, and it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like it was written by an insane person. Like, I don't know what I was talking about. It really is like, so I was trying to be so like overly clever with all of my
Mm-hmm.
writing, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make any sense. And
Right.
so definitely through the years I've gotten more lean and precise in the way I describe things, and it's been easier to find
Right.
clients as well.
Well, that's one of the skills I really admire about you, is your ability to be clear and concise but still be beautiful. Because there's that
Thanks.
tendency. I know it's something I struggle with my writing, is I tend to go on and on and on because I don't feel like I'm explaining myself clearly enough. And the
Mm-hmm.
ironic thing is I can do a great job for my clients, but when it's
Yeah.
for myself, so I mean that's why I often quote you, and I love I've shared in a million places that Einstein quote, which I think I first found through you, which was the whole, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it well enough yourself. And I'm sure I'm paraphrasing there, but because
Yeah.
it's true, because I work with so many entrepreneurs who come to me, and I'm like, 90% of your problem in attracting clients is nobody understands what you do. And I know
Yeah.
you understand what you do and you think you're communicating it, but you're not speaking in the language of the people who need you. And what I try to get them to, and I know you try to get your clients to, is what's the voice in their head saying? Like the
Mm-hmm.
voice in their head is not saying, I need a best of breed technology solution that blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, it's saying, I need to save money. I need to save time. I need to
Right.
get better. I need a podcast. I need, it's
Yeah.
something very specific. And I know that people are
Yeah.
so scared about specificity because they think it's going to leave all these other clients out in the cold. But the more clear and concise you are in communicating, even as a creative, I think is the important lesson here. The
Yeah.
more that people will be
Absolutely.
drawn to your work, you know?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, when I have people who are really struggling to write, a clear, concise description of what it is that they
Mm-hmm.
do, one thing that I really recommend is that you get outside of your industry and look at websites and magazine ads and pieces from other companies that are totally outside of your industry. So for example, if you're trying to open ticket sales for a retreat that you're
Mm-hmm.
hosting, like a transformational creative retreat, go look at like how the Ritz Hotel describes their hotel, or go look at how an airline go look at a company that describes things very clearly, very
Mm-hmm.
precisely, and see if you can take some inspiration from that,
Right.
and try to take like a less is more approach with your writing. It's really
Sure.
helpful. Look at how Tiffany's describes their jewelry. They
Mm-hmm.
don't write 40 pages about every piece, every
Right.
ring that scrolls down, 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 down. They have a simple, precise, clear
Mm-hmm.
description and a gorgeous photo and a brand that speaks for itself. And boom, you don't need much more than that. So we
Mm-hmm.
can find inspiration from other companies that are excellent at communicating clearly, and soak in some of that.
Absolutely. Well, I love
Yeah.
that. Because I know, that's a big question when folks who do what you do, and they don't know all the years of work that have gone into being where you are now, but it's that journey of turning that creativity into something that people are willing to pay money for. I mean, that's the bottom
Yeah.
line. It doesn't mean your art is you're not selling out, you're not lessening your standards, but if you expect people to open their wallets for something that you have to be able to explain to them what they're opening their wallets for. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking for myself,
Mm-hmm.
my journey, I think of the past 8 years or so has been,
Oh.
obviously I want to work with clients. That's where I get most of my income. I want to do projects that feel meaningful and exciting, but
Mm-hmm.
what else? What are the other art projects that I want to include in my body of work so
Mm-hmm.
that I don't feel like a sellout, so that I feel like
Exactly.
I'm still making space for writing fiction, for writing poetry, for having my own newsletter and blog. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it's very important to feel like I'm not just doing 100% client related work and that's
Yes.
it. I
Mm-hmm.
need some balance. I need to have space for my own art projects as well. And it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to strike that balance for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And
Yep.
there's been a lot of tears into my laptop over the years, but it feels so much better.
Right.
I think when we have space for our own personal projects as
Right.
well as the stuff that's like very, income generating, I guess you could
For
say.
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, your soul needs to eat some of that. So speaking
Yeah.
of work and your latest book, You're Going to Survive, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, this book was definitely born out of a very personal place for me. I mentioned I've been self-employed for about 8 years now, and I've been writing and sharing my work, in magazines and online for about 10 or 12 years. And I've also had a lot of other adventures. I helped my partner to open a restaurant at one point. So I've had other kind of entrepreneurial side
Mm-hmm.
projects. And there have been a lot of ups and downs. There have been some wonderful victories. There have been some, beautiful achievements. There have been moments, where I feel like I can't believe I get paid to do this. It's a dream come true. And there have been some not so great moments. there, yeah, I mean, there was an experience where someone plagiarized my entire website and set up a fake website pretending to be me.
Oh
There
my
have been
gosh.
experiences where people stole my intellectual property and sold it themselves. There have been negative reviews about my
Mm-hmm.
work, 1-star Amazon reviews about my books. I mean, there have been
Mm-hmm.
so many low points as
Right.
well. Stressful, discouraging, oh my God, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna die kinds
Mm-hmm.
of moments. And I know I'm not alone, right? I know that we all go through these ups and downs, but we don't talk about the downs very much, I think.
Right.
We don't talk about it publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wanted to create this book to share some of those down moments,
Mm-hmm.
and not in a depressing way, but
Right.
hopefully in an
Here's
uplifting
hope.
way.
Yeah.
Here's hope. So I created this book. I started by interviewing and talking to a whole bunch of people, including you.
Thank you.
And I asked all kinds of people from all different industries and walks of life, can you tell me about one of the worst moments in your career? A really
Mm-hmm.
hurtful moment or a really sad moment? What happened? How did you get through it? What did you learn? What wisdom did you gain from
Mm-hmm.
that experience? And what's the story? So I collected a whole bunch of stories, and they're all so different and they're all so
So
beautiful.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting perspectives. And then I added a whole bunch of my own stories as well, some of my
Mm-hmm.
worst moments and what I learned. And my hope is that this is the kind of book that someone will pick up when they're having a tough day and just kind of flip through a couple stories and go, okay, like
Yeah.
I'm not alone.
Right.
Everyone goes through ups and downs, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to survive. It's going to be okay.
For sure. And
Yeah.
I just thought the book was so brilliant in its simplicity. It's just, let's gather some stories of horrific things. And, we can look back and go, which one, did
Right.
I pick? And I think you and I connected on mine also because of a particular blog post that I had written. Because I was like, oh God, what do I choose? Like something from my corporate career, something from starting my
Yeah.
own business. And my story in particular was about dealing with negative reviews on Amazon of a book
Yeah.
that I'd written. And for me, it was about it was a memoir. Like people are critiquing,
Yeah.
for the first time, not that I'm in any, league of celebrities, but I kind of feel for them. I mean, I'm kind of way more unknown than a lot of famous people that are constantly critiqued
Yeah.
online. And so, but the interesting thing which I was so honored to be able to share in my story in the book was that 95%, 99% of the feedback about my book was amazing. And
Yeah.
you just get bogged down in those like one or two negative reviews or negative
Yeah.
critiques. I mean, if it's not a book, whatever, negative feedback that you're getting. And then often we can forget about the 99% impact we actually are having. And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. We
yeah.
always fixate on like the one negative comment or the 5 negative comments out of 100. It's our
For
brain just
sure.
obsesses about that.
They do. And
Yeah.
I remember my husband was like, because for my memoir, Rebooting My Brain, I have well over, 160 reviews on Amazon,
Yeah.
and they're all like, I'm blessed. They're wonderful about how I supported people in their darkest times and how useful the information was given, brother, sister, husband, somebody was going through some sort of brain injury or some sort of
Yeah.
crisis. And I would just cry about the ones because it was about my life, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
even about, I was okay with the feedback about if they thought the writing wasn't very good. But when it's like, I didn't think it was thrilling enough. And it's like, well, I'm sorry I didn't die. Like,
Yeah. Would you have
so,
preferred
I'm
like
so
another
sorry.
coma?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I would get hung up on it. And my husband would say, Maria, go back in your email and go look at all the emails from people that you've gotten while they were sitting in a hospital emergency room and they found
Yeah.
your book. And he's like, and stop reading Amazon. Like, stop looking at the reviews.
Yeah.
So, that's just one example, but there's so many other stories in the book. Can you share a few others? Maybe some of the diversity of some of the stories in the book, and just give folks a little teaser. I want people
Yeah.
to get the book, but can you share a little bit
Absolutely.
about some of the other stories in there? Because they're not just for authors or solopreneurs. I mean, you have a variety of different challenges that people have faced. So
Yeah.
talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
One of my favorite, I mean, they're all my favorites. They're
I
like,
know.
it's so
Your
hard to
children,
choose,
yeah.
but one story that I really love and that I think about a lot, especially in these especially difficult times that we're
Mm-hmm.
living in,
Mm-hmm.
is there's a story that a wonderful woman named Ellen Fondler told to me. And
Oh,
Ellen, yeah, she's wonderful. She's a longtime friend, and she's had a very interesting career. She began her career as an attorney. She worked on death penalty cases, so very, very high stress, high emotion
mm-hmm.
cases. Then she became an entrepreneur. She opened and sold numerous businesses over the course of her life, and
Mm-hmm.
she's just done a lot of really interesting work. And one of her biggest projects was she wanted to raise money to build basically like a natural sciences education center for the kids in her community. So it would
Mm-hmm.
have gardens and it would have, kind of like a natural
Love
habitat, and the kids could
that.
learn. Yeah, so cool, right? They could learn about, the soil and the environment and pollution in a hands-on way, working
Mm-hmm.
in the garden. Such a cool project, right? Like, what community wouldn't want that? And she wanted to just raise the money and just do it, But in order to do it, she, for various bureaucratic reasons, she needed to get the local school board to approve the project, right? And she
Mm-hmm.
didn't need anything from them. She wasn't asking them for money or anything. She just needed their approval in order to, use this part of land and do it.
Mm-hmm.
So to make a long story short, she and her team, who had already been working on this project, for many, many months, they went into the school board meeting, and this was a sort of a notoriously difficult school board. They were
Mm-hmm.
very hard to impress. They were kind of crusty and uptight.
Yeah.
And so this team marches in there, they give their presentation, they're, really excited. And the school board says no. They reject the project. And there were a bunch of complicated reasons why, which Ellen kind of learned about later. There had been a miscommunication. They had gotten some wrong information, this and that,
Mm-hmm.
but Ellen didn't know any of this at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she and her team just walked out of that room sort of shell shocked. They were like, what? Like
How is this a bad idea?
how like we literally just want to build a beautiful, life-changing, like, natural sciences center for the kids, and why would you not?
Right.
So they were dumbfounded. They were, of course, very discouraged, and they were ready to give up. They figured, well, that was our shot, and they said no, and oh well, I guess this isn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
But Ellen, being the very, very persistent, tenacious person that she is,
Mm-hmm.
she said to her team, no, we are not giving up. We've already worked so hard. we're
gosh.
going back in. We're going to go back in there and we're going to change their minds.
Right.
And she really felt like she owed it to herself, to the team, to the community, to the kids, to not give up so easily. And so they totally revamped their proposal. They gathered like more stories to really show why this would be such a great, inspiring thing. They set up another meeting with the same school board, and they went back in and they changed their minds. And they got the approval that they needed to proceed.
And imagine if they'd
Amazing.
given up, right? Imagine if
Imagine,
they'd just taken no
and
from
let's
you.
be honest, I probably would have given up. Most people would have given up,
Right.
Most people would have been like, whatever, let's go watch Netflix. Like, that was a lame day. But she refused. And because of her persistence, because she was willing to go back in one more time, over, 25,000 kids have gotten to enjoy this amazing space that she was able to build. And she's created a massive ripple effect in her community. So I love that story because we all have those moments, right? Where, a client says no, or you don't get the job that you wanted, or there's some kind of disappointment at a meeting or whatever. And, we always face that choice. Do I just give up? Is it all over? Or can I go back in? Can I go back in with a new angle, with a new pitch, with a new story, with renewed enthusiasm? If there's got to be some way to unlock this door.
Right.
And that story, I think about it all the time whenever I'm having a discouraging day. It's one of my favorites.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that it's so important about, none of us, we're all human, and none of us are immune to rejection or something going wrong, or, and so you can either live your life being scared of that no, and then 100% of the time never accomplish anything, or you can say, what do I have to lose? Like, if this is something I'm passionate about, if I want to try this, and whether it's submitting to a literary agent, or trying out for a play, or whatever it is, I always go, what's the worst that can happen? They say no. They're not saying no to me as a person. They might be saying no because my proposal's not tight enough, or they might be saying no because I'm not the right fit for the part, or they might be saying no because I had a bad day, or they might be saying no because I wasn't clear in what I was trying to communicate that I was trying to do, getting back to what we were talking about earlier. So there's all those moments of being able to find, okay, what's behind the no? What is it that I can improve on and then try again the next time? And so, talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, how did you learn something new through this project? I mean, you obviously have had a lot of ups and downs. You've learned a lot because of the stories that you shared in the book as well. But in doing all these interviews and in talking to all these people, what was new that surprised you that you learned about surviving challenges?
There were a lot of beautiful realizations and reminders, for sure. I mean, one, I wouldn't say this was surprising, but it was a good reminder, is that the people who succeed in their industries, and by succeed, I don't mean like, they're Beyonce, but the people who are able
They
to,
could be.
but the people who are able to make a living and keep moving forward, and who are respected in their field, and those markers of success, they are persistent people, right? They are people who, much like Ellen, after hearing no one time or 10 times or 100 times, there's something inside of them that says, I'm going back in, and these are the people who just go back in and go back in and go back in. Those are the people who are successful. They may not necessarily be the most talented or, the most sort of like, gifted from God, but they are persistent. And that is a quality that I aspire to have even more of. I think we could all use more of it. And it was very inspiring to hear all of those stories. Yeah. And persistence is, I mean, really, if we boil it down, it's every day when we're facing that little crossroads of, do I keep trying? Do I give up? Do I keep trying? Do I give up? They just choose, keep trying, over and over and over. And it's a personal choice that these people have made again and again and again.
And we should talk about the difference there, because there's trying over and over again the same thing that's not working for you. That's not persistence. Persistence is trying it over and over again in a slightly different way to see if the outcome changes, right? And so, you get a lot of people that go, well, I tried this thing 6 times. And it's like, did you change the proposal? Did you change
Yeah.
the angle? Did you change no, I just kept resending it because I was trying to be persistent. And
Right.
no, that's not quite what persistence means.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that? And then kind of folding into that, this idea of resilience, because I feel like persistence and
Yeah.
resilience, healthy persistence and resilience go hand in hand.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example actually of how this book even came about, because I think
Mm-hmm.
it ties into this story. So when I decided that I wanted to write this book, and I'd actually kind of written most of the manuscript at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and it had been a couple years since I had a new book out, and I decided, this time around, I want to work with a publisher. I want a traditional publisher, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the path that I see for this book.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was I emailed my literary agent,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, oh, thanks for reaching out to me. This sounds like a really cool project. However, I've actually retired and I can't help you. And I was like, oh, there goes my
But I
agent.
had an
Okay.
agent.
Like,
Yeah.
I know. Okay. So then I thought, no problem. Just a little hiccup in the road. I'm going to email my previous publisher who published my last book.
Mm-hmm.
Sent them the proposal. Not quite right for us. No, thank you, but good luck. Okay. So then I emailed another publisher who had actually reached out to me about a year earlier. And
Mm-hmm.
at that time, I didn't really have a project for them, but I circled back and I said, hey, I've got something for you now. Interested? No response from them. Yeah. So I was like, okay.
Like
So
I'm running out
then
of lifelines. Like where?
exactly. So then I went the old school way. I started compiling a list of literary agents who represent books in this genre, and I
Mm-hmm.
started cold emailing and sending my query letter, which is kind of like the cover letter that you send
Mm-hmm.
to introduce yourself to an agent, and
Mm-hmm.
describing the project and this and that. I got a few interested responses, but after I sent them the full proposal, not interested, or it wasn't right for them, or many of them said something to the effect of, I think the book concept is cool,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think you have a big enough platform to be appealing to a major publisher. So
Okay.
I can't represent you. So a lot of dead ends there.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I think I had gotten about 20 rejections or
Mm-hmm.
so in total, right? Just kind of one after another.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I had them all in my inbox, and I was kind of looking at all of these rejection emails, like 1, 2,
And
3,
that's always
4.
really helpful. Yeah.
Very,
Really good for
very
your mental
inspiring.
well-being.
and at that point I was sort of like, all right, we need a new game plan here.
Mm-hmm.
I sure I can just kind of keep emailing agent after agent after agent after agent, and probably at some point someone will want to represent me, but who knows how long that could take. I mean, it could
Mm-hmm.
take weeks, it could take months, it could take years. And I was feeling not impatient exactly, but it's like I definitely felt like there
Yeah.
must be another way,
Right.
to move this project forward.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I actually, and this was a little scary, I started emailing friends and colleagues, and I even put a little message in my newsletter that goes out to my mailing list. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, openly and vulnerably, I'm looking for a new publisher. I'm looking, if you know someone, if you have someone you could introduce me to,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate any support of any kind,
Mm-hmm.
even just positive vibes
Yeah.
in my direction. And I was honest, and I opened myself up, and that was the choice that really set things in motion, because someone knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who could make an introduction for me. But that never would have happened if I had kept all of this a secret. So
Yes.
I had to say to my community, like, hey, I need a favor, or I need help, which I'm not really comfortable doing. So it was a little awkward to do that, but
Mm-hmm.
I was very touched and surprised by how willing people were to
Mm-hmm.
help in whatever way that they could. And that is what ultimately led to me getting a book deal with the right
Mm-hmm.
publisher. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think the moral of the story here is, yeah, persistence is not doing the same thing the same way over and over and over, like you're banging your
Right.
head against a locked door.
Right.
Persistence is keeping the train moving forward, but finding creative ways to maneuver and change your strategy as you go along, while
Yeah.
still keeping that vision that you're moving towards in sight.
Right.
So yeah.
And I think, related to that is where that resilience comes in, because otherwise you just get paralyzed by the rejection. And it just has to
Yeah.
be like, nope, this is not personal. This is not about the work. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
Maybe but I mean, it's just, it's something is not always a right fit. And I mean, there's so many famous
Totally.
stories we've heard. I mean, what J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter got rejected. What was it? Some crazy number, like 47 times or
Bunch of
27 times
times.
before she
Yeah.
found like this tiny little scholastic publisher that was like,
Yep.
okay, we'll publish it. Meanwhile, joke's on you, big publishers. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that the work wasn't worthy. It just means that it wasn't a right fit at that time, or people couldn't see her vision or whatever. One of my
Totally.
favorite ones is I'm a huge fan of Katy Perry. And I
Yeah.
saw one of her, like, behind the musics or something like that. And she had actually, I think, not one, but two record deals that went nowhere before she
Mm.
became Katy Perry. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she got a record deal fairly young after she had left home and gone to LA. And she was she had all the right connections. She was working with like Alanis Morissette's producer, and
Yeah.
she got a record deal. And then, like many record deals, it didn't pan out. They didn't invest in her. They weren't and then they cut her off. And then she stayed the course. She stayed in LA. She kept working on her music. I think she got another record deal that went the same route.
Mm.
And so you would think, okay, it's time to go home, time to pack up my stuff, and
Right.
whatever. But she didn't. And, third time's the charm. And she finally became who she became. So you just think about, had she quit that first time or even that second time. And people look at that, or they look at that success, or they might even look at your success and go like, oh, I just wish I had it. I wish it was just like here today. And it's like, no, you've got to kind of like, not that you have to pay your dues, but you have to have that persistence. You have to have that resilience to keep going. What do you say to people that look at you? I mean, and I've known you a really long time, so I've watched your sort of meteoric rise. And what do you say to people that go, oh, I want what you have, but I want it now. I want it like tomorrow. What do you say to that?
I don't think anyone's ever said that to me outright.
They might be thinking it, yeah.
But
like, how do I get to where you are, like, tomorrow?
The unfortunate, but not really unfortunate, the reality, of course, is that it takes time to build anything, right? To build anything worthwhile. And I think I was very blessed because I happened to be born into a family of very creative people.
Yep.
And so I watched, for example, my mom, who was a classically trained opera singer. I watched her rehearse every single day, even when she didn't feel like it. I watched her go to her rehearsals. I watched her go to audition after audition after audition. And I saw...
rejected. Right.
Get rejected.
Right.
Absolutely. Get terrible reviews in the newspaper and still have to get on stage and perform that night. So I witnessed her and I saw what devotion looks like, right? I saw the slow, persistent discipline and devotion that is required to build that kind of career. And I've also seen it with my brother. My brother is a musician. He's also featured in the book. This is a guy who picked up a saxophone when he was 12 years old and fell in love and has basically never set it down. But that's taken huge tenacity. It's taken work. I mean,
commitment.
Commitment. I will never forget. There was a time he came to visit me. I was living in Minnesota at the time, and it was freezing cold outside. It was the middle of winter. And he said to me, I lived in a little studio apartment. He said, hey, is there anywhere I could go practice for a few hours? Because he needed to practice, because he practices every day. That's what he does. He's disciplined. Right. And I kind of jokingly said, like, well, you could like go in the janitor's closet downstairs, or maybe in the parking lot below the building. And I was like joking, like, haha. And he goes, yeah, either one would be fine. And like, meaning he'll do whatever it takes anywhere, no matter the circumstances, to put in those 2 to 3 hours of practice every day, because he's a disciplined artist and he doesn't quit, even when things are a little bit uncomfortable or not ideal. Right. So because of role models like those, I think that I think I've always had that kind of mindset about writing is
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I ever expected things to go perfectly right away. Like I
Mm-hmm.
sort of expected that it would be a long and somewhat laborious journey, and it certainly
Mm-hmm.
has been.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because of the influences of my mom and my brother and others in my life, I
Mm-hmm.
welcome that. I feel like this is what I've signed up for. This is the
Mm-hmm.
journey I've signed up for, the most beautiful highs and the lowest lows, and
Right.
a lot of just kind of, grunt work in between.
Exactly. I don't know. I'm going to assume the answer is yes. Have you read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
Yeah,
So
beautiful book.
I love her perspective on, when she was younger and she decided she wanted to be a writer. She sort of made a deal with inspiration. And it was like, look, I'm going to have to do my part. I know you're
Yeah.
not going to do everything for me, but I'm going to commit to doing my part and see where it goes. So it wasn't sort of
Yeah.
this like decision taken lightly. It was, this is what is my work is going to be. And
Yeah.
I'm going to give it my all, but I'm asking that, speaking to inspiration or creativity, that you stay by my side because I'm committed
Yeah.
to it. And it's such
I
a
love
lovely
that.
image of like, I think she was really young when she sort of said this to the universe and that
Yeah.
she was never going to make her creativity be responsible for keeping her alive. She wasn't
Right.
going to force her creativity to make her money if it wasn't meant to be, but she
Yeah.
would find other ways to make money while she was still pursuing her creativity, but she would never demand of it that it sustain her financially. And then she said, now I'm blessed, it does sustain me financially, but she's like, that's the bargain I entered
Yeah.
into, was that I'm going to do this whether I'm making money at it or not. And
Yeah. I
I'm not
love that.
it was so beautiful. It was of course, I'm not even a third as eloquent as she is, but, and that's being generous, but, the way that she said that, of that idea of like, I'm never going to ask my creativity I'm never going to demand that it have to support me. And I'm never going to put that kind of pressure on it. I thought
Yeah.
was this beautiful, beautiful thing.
I agree. I love that perspective. And it kind of ties back to something we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation of, what does it mean to be a working artist? What does it mean
Yes.
to be a creative entrepreneur?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people that I know who are musicians or writers or designers or illustrators or some kind of creative field,
Mm-hmm.
they don't make a living doing just one thing. They
Mm-hmm.
usually have a healthy, kind of body of work that includes a variety of different ways that they can feed their spirit and feed their belly and make money and make art. And
Right.
it's a beautiful patchwork, right? So for
Right.
example, even my brother, my brother has been a musician his entire life. He's Grammy nominated. He's incredibly talented, but he doesn't make a living just by selling his albums. He never
Mm-hmm.
has, and he may never. He makes a living by teaching, by touring, by producing, by working with
Mm-hmm.
other artists, playing backup. It's a whole
Right.
composite of things that he does. It all falls under the umbrella of music. So
Right.
it's all part of his music career, but
Right.
it's
It's
like
different
Liz,
revenue streams coming
different
in.
revenue
Yeah.
streams.
Mm-hmm.
And that is great because it means that he doesn't have to feel huge anxiety about any one project. He's not
Right.
putting all of his eggs in one basket. He's not saying, "Oh my God, if this album isn't a huge success, it's over. I'm dead. I'm starving in the streets." Like
Yeah.
that's a lot of pressure to put
Yes.
on your art. And yeah, Liz talks about this beautifully in Big
Mm-hmm.
Magic, how you don't want to put too much pressure on any
Mm-hmm.
one project, because it's like unfair to yourself, and it's unfair to the muse and inspiration. You want to
Yes.
spread it out.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Hedge your bets. A portfolio strategy of
Yes,
inspiration.
exactly.
Um, so I want to just quickly just ask one last question, and then let's talk about where folks can find the book. What are sort of your nuggets of advice for people based on the book and the stories you compiled of dealing with negativity, of dealing with the trolls, of dealing with those crushing rejection letters? Are there maybe two or three, these are my go-to things that I do when I get rejected, or when I experience a negative, whatever it is, a negative review or negative feedback? Is there anything you can guide folks on how they take care of themselves during that time?
Yeah. The biggest one, I think, is don't isolate yourself.
Mm.
Don't go into your bedroom and close the door and cry and fall into a pit of
Or
don't
do it
do
for
that.
5 minutes and then
Yeah, exactly.
set a
Do that
timer.
for set a timer, 5 minute meltdown. But then you want to reach out, right? You
Mm-hmm.
want to text a friend, call your mom. If you're part of, a business coaching group or mastermind group, that's what that group is for. You go to share what you're going through. You can also, if there's no one around immediately that you can talk to, maybe that's when you pick up a book, you pick up a memoir of someone that you admire and you read about their ups and downs to just remind yourself, I'm not in this alone. Other people have gone through something like this, maybe something much worse than this, and
Right.
they
And they've survived.
survived, and so will I. So I really believe that this is the moment to reach out to your community and to connect and to get other people's stories and to remind yourself, this is a painful moment, but it is a small blip. It's just a little moment in my story. It will pass. I will survive. And I have people who love me in the meantime.
Well, and that's why one of the things that I do for my mental health is I keep a folder on my email of sweet stuff. And whenever
Yeah.
I get a compliment or I get, and I have to revisit that folder when I'm feeling really down, when
Yeah.
when maybe the clients aren't coming in that month or I have gotten that negative rejection or I had that negative experience with someone, I have to go back to that folder to remind myself of where I am appreciated and where my talents lie. And I always recommend to people that they have that little sweet stuff folder somewhere tucked away that they can
Yeah.
go back to in those times of that sanity check of like, in the grand scheme of things, again, the 99% versus the 1%, like, let's get some perspective here of all the good we are doing and all the ways our talents are appreciated. And it's just kind of remind yourself of that.
It's such a good idea. I do the same thing. I store emails from that are, positive feedback from clients, things like that. It's so wonderful to read that kind of stuff. And even if you only have 5 messages in that folder, it still counts. And that's 5 people whose lives that you have impacted. And it's also a great way to, we think about that there's a difference between a feeling and a fact, right? So you might be feeling like, oh my God, it's all over. I'm a disaster. My business,
I'm awful at what I do.
I'm the worst. That's a feeling, right? And feelings are sometimes true and feelings are not always true, right? So if you're feeling that way, it can be really helpful then to look at the facts. And the facts are, you have 5 emails from clients who deeply appreciate the work that you've done. That is not a feeling. It's not up for debate. It's a fact, right? So you can kind of reorient yourself in the facts of the situation, and that can make you feel a lot steadier and calmer and kind of get you out of the spiral of doom.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the other big lessons I learned through my health crisis, which I shared in the book Rebooting My Brain, was about finding the humor.
Yeah.
And it's really hard when you're fragile and you feel shell-shocked and you feel just rejected, but like even in some of those negative online reviews, my husband and I would have a good laugh about them. Like, I think there was one, I don't know if I mentioned it in the story in your book, You're Going to Survive, but there was one that said, well, it was kind of like blasting me for whatever and said, I think her husband deserves all the credit for her getting her life back together.
Right.
Like basically dismissing my entire experience. And so my husband and I had a good laugh about that, and he'll bring that up in a joking way every now and then.
Right.
Like, well, I'm the one responsible for you. I'm like, oh, okay. But, it's being able to find the humor in those dark moments, and it just, I don't know, when you can laugh about something or force yourself to laugh about something, it eases the tension, it lowers your blood pressure, it clears your mind.
Yeah.
So anytime you can try to find the humor, even if it's like, let's try to envision what this person looks like. That's this troll on my blog, and like, what's their whole backstory? Like, go out and have a few drinks and come up with this crazy backstory about this person, or, but just being able to find the humor in those everyday setbacks. I don't know. I mean, do you find that that's useful for you?
Totally. Yeah. The humor is not always available in
It's
the
dark
exact
humor,
moment,
yeah.
but later for sure.
Yes.
There was one of the stories in the book came from my friend Paul,
Mm-hmm.
and he talks about how someone unsubscribed from his newsletter
Mm-hmm.
and then posted something on Twitter calling Paul numbnuts as an insult. Like, this newsletter was so stupid.
Was he
What
like
a
70 years
numbnuts.
old? Like,
Well, and Paul was, a little hurt, of course,
uh-huh.
but then he couldn't stop thinking about this hilarious word that he hadn't heard in like decades,
Right.
numbnuts, and it became like this hilarious thing that he thinks about. So I think for sure there's often
It's like,
there's
why I
often a
oughta, like, I just, sounds like something from the 50s or something. Like, oh, that's
I know
funny.
it's a great word. We should bring it back, or
Right.
maybe not. We'll keep it to ourselves. Laugh
Right.
about it in private.
Exactly.
But all of this is to say, for sure, humor
Mm-hmm.
can absolutely be a way to heal from painful experiences. I
Mm-hmm.
think some of the best stand-up comedians in the world are
They
the
have very
people
human
who
lives. Yeah.
they take their personal stories and their
Mm-hmm.
embarrassing moments and humiliations and mistakes, and they turn it into comedy. They
Mm-hmm.
find the bleak humor in it all,
Mm-hmm.
and we can do the same
We
for
can.
sure.
Great. All right.
Yeah.
So tell us where we can find the book.
You can find it in the garbage can. No, just kidding. It's a terrible
No,
book.
it's a keeper.
Don't buy it. Numbnuts. You can find it. You can find it online. It's available at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, IndieBound, all the usual online
Okay.
places. Search for "You're Going to Survive,"
And I will
and it
put some
has.
links below as well
Oh,
in
great,
the little
perfect.
notes
Yeah,
here too. So
click the links, and then or click the wherever they
wherever
are.
they are, yeah.
Click them. And it's also going to be at your local bookstore starting in
Wonderful.
December 15th is the
Nice.
date that it will be physically around in places. So support your local bookstore
So in time for the holidays.
in time for the
Although I don't
holidays.
know when folks might be seeing this, but it'll be available after the holidays too, if you're viewing this after the holidays.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so find
Perfect.
it there, and I hope you like it. I hope it makes you feel comforted and a little more optimistic about the future.
Well, your writing always does for me. You are a magician with words. I've told you that
Aw,
many, many times, but you
thanks.
are, and you write so beautifully. And the way that you've crafted these stories make us all sound smarter than we are. So
You're all very
thank
smart.
you. And I'm so honored that you joined us today. Thanks for being here. And you guys can check out
Thank you.
Alexandra at alexandrafranzen.com. Please subscribe to her newsletter and get your own inspirations in your email box. And you
Thanks.
just have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It was so much fun. I loved your year.
Perfect. All right. Take care.
Yay!